It's a tough question to answer, but I think the big thing is the foundation of working hard and having serious goals that you set for yourself, and having a roadmap of how you want to achieve those goals. And achieving the goals that you set for yourself don't necessarily mean I have to coach Western Province under 21s in 2 years' time, or I have to become a top 14 coach in 5 years' time. I would make it more personal even than that. It says one of my goals is to be one of the best line-out specialists in the next 5 years. And now that's a complex goal, because how do you measure that?
In this episode of the Lessons from the Game podcast, we sit down with world-class attack coach AB Zondagh, a man who has shaped backlines from South Africa to Toulouse and Scotland, but most recently Lyon. We deep dive into what it really takes to build confident, creative players, and how one wrong message can kill months of good coaching. If you're a coach, player, or just love the game, this one is packed with gold. And just a reminder, this is one of our first episodes that we recorded last year, so please mind the mistakes. But if you enjoy our podcast, please like and subscribe. We really would appreciate your support, and also leave a comment when you can. AB, great to see you. How have you been?
Yeah, very good. Thanks, guys. Thanks for the invitation to jump on the pod. It's been good. As you said, me and Ben, we go way back. My dad used to coach Ben at Saris, and Ben spent a lot of time in South Africa, so he can gooi die taal very well. Speaks very good Afrikaans for a proper Englishman. And yeah, obviously, Gutsy, you and me, we also go back quite a bit. Obviously, our relationship went from strength to strength when I arrived in Toulouse, and we spent a lot of time together there within the rugby circles, but also outside. So yeah, it's a pleasure to be on a pod with familiar faces.
Awesome stuff. Just for audience that's listening today and watching as well, maybe just give you a brief background of where you come from, at which level you have coached, just so they can get a bit of insight to your.
So I'm fully fledged South African.
Yes.
Easy to say after 2 World Cup wins, but about 6-8 years ago it wasn't so easy. But no, we're very proud. I'm a very proud South African. I'm living in France at the moment, coaching at Lyon. I'm the attack coach there, in the top 14. Also very privileged and blessed that we stayed up in the top 14. So that was the main aim for this year, and we achieved it. Although it's not the biggest, I'd say, achievement for us. It was a tough year, but in the end a good year, because we stayed up. Yeah, so I started my coaching career, I would say, when I was probably 6 years old, starting to figure out what rugby was, playing as much as I could. Obviously, my main thing growing up was I was either going to be a professional surfer or a professional rugby player. That was my main aim. I had a great opportunity to travel overseas with my dad when he was coaching in the UK. That's where he coached Ben at Saracens when he was director of rugby. And yeah, I think throughout my childhood, I've obviously been watching my dad be a professional coach his whole life. So it's just something that was kind of in the background, but I never really thought it's something that I would want to do. I either wanted to play, or, as I said, I was really big into my surfing and extreme sports, as I suppose a lot of kids are between the ages of 13 and 16 or 18. But then when I came back from the UK, I went to Belarus, and I had a bit of a bad injury on my neck. So I stopped playing rugby, and I went straight into coaching, actually, at the school. So that was my last year in my matric year. And then from there, I went off and studied at Stellenbosch. I kept coaching just because I kind of wanted to stay involved. And then in my last year of studying sports science at Stellenbosch, my dad was running his own private rugby academy, which built to provide a pathway for players to get into the professional system that didn't get picked up during that school system, that Craven Week system. And he offered me a job just as I was finishing off my studies. And I said, well, I've got nothing else to do. I'm qualified, but I don't have a job. So this sounds like a good idea. And we worked together for 6-7 years. We ran what was called the RPC, the Rugby Performance Center. And then from there, it was kind of the kickstart and the platform for me to kick on and become a professional coach. I would say it was probably towards the end of year 2 at the RPC with my dad, where I kind of figured like this is really something that I would want to do. And then I said to my dad, look, I want to become a professional coach. What must I do? What can you help me with? I'll follow the path, you know. And from that day, but I think even before, he was kind of molding me and lining me up with specific people across the world. He sent me away to Argentina for 2 months, 3 months to go coach there. He sent me to the Netherlands, to the UK, to France. I went a second time with him to France to go and spend some time with Pierreville Pro. That's also where myself and Ben connected. And yeah, that's just kind of how my philosophy, I'd say, was shaped, and also kind of how the story started. But I'd say when I knew I wanted to become a coach, around about 20 years old, 19, 20 years old, I was sure that's what I wanted to do. I wasn't certain that I was going to be able to do it, but I gave it a very big crack.
Awesome stuff. Okay, we're going to deep dive into that a bit later, AB. But I think the best is to hand it over to Ben. He knows you best to get us started, and really looking forward to this chat. I think like you mentioned, back in the day in Toulouse, we spent a lot of time together. Really enjoyed our chats, and it's always, I've learned a lot from you as well, and it's always been great about those type of rugby chats and with guys who are passionate about their jobs, about what they do. But yeah, Ben, I'm going to hand it over to you.
It's good to see you. Welcome. It's really good to have you on it. I just, obviously we've known each other a very long time since you were a kid, and you were in the background when your dad was coaching, as you just mentioned, so I guess there's been loads of influences for you along the way. How have you found the evolution of your coaching journey, and where where you ended up now, and where do you see it going from here?
I don't know. I suppose I approach my career like I would approach surfing a wave. I feel like I'm lucky to be where I am, and I say that to myself every day, even though a lot of the times it can get tough and it can be tough. But I try and appreciate where I am and what I've done and what I've experienced more so. And to say where I'm going to go, I've got absolutely no clue. The one thing I do know is that rugby, especially the rugby coaching world, it's very, very unpredictable. So you could one day be winning the double, and the next day you could be coaching an under 14 team at a school. But I do believe that if you are really passionate about coaching and you love what you do, that you would be prepared to do that. You'd be prepared to drop out of the professional game, but keep going, keep coaching, keep evolving, and then get back into it if you are lucky enough to be able to do that again. So for me, like I say, I feel lucky that I'm able to do this job, and I'm trying to not let it just pass by. I'm not just trying to get through the day, get through the year, get through the season. Even if I talk about the last season at Lyon, it was tough, it was complicated, but I see it as a challenge. I see it as, this is the length of my career. For me, I'm very much still at the start of my career. What can I learn? What challenges can I face? And what solutions can I find to make me a better coach for the next year, the next season, the next job, the next team? And if that be I stay with Lyon until I'm 60 years old, maybe that'll be a great story and a great challenge in itself. But if I move on to a different team later on in my career, then I've hopefully learned a lot of lessons along the way, and I've become a better coach for it.
Yeah. So I guess I'm naturally, as a coach myself, I love, I could ask you loads of coaching questions, but I guess when we speak to people, we're looking at those themes and those threads that are throughout their life. You'll see them every aspect of their life, and whether that be resilience, whether that be part of their journey and what's determined their their journey or directed their path. With you, where would you say where are you at now in terms of that philosophy? Has it evolved? You've just done your first year at Lyon. When you arrived there, what's the sort of first thing that AB Zondagh does when he goes to a place? Like, how does it start for you, that journey?
The Lyon journey was particular because I arrived early so that I could settle my family into Lyon. And obviously, to my style, I started going to work when they were supposed to be on holiday. I arrived for their last game it was Bayonne at home. They lost the game, and it was funny story because they didn't have video and they apparently scored a try and then it wasn't awarded. So they actually should have gone through to the playoffs. And I was there for that match, and afterwards I was working with Xavier Garbajosa, and I was obviously working with him for months before that. 3 days after, basically after I arrived, and I spent 2 days with him in the office, and he got fired. He got asked to leave. And that's kind of how my journey started at Lyon. It was an interesting one. It was a tough one. I mean, we all know those are the realities of coaching, and it can happen to anybody, and you have to be prepared to adapt and to find a solution to kind of make it work. So for me, it was a tough season. I think there's a lot of things that, I don't know how to say it, but there's a lot of things that kind of like spilt during that process. A lot of balls were dropped. And I think the cumulative effect of that made the season a really tough season, not just because of the psychological hangover of what happened or the fact that there were new coaches or a new manager that came in the last second. I don't think that was the big crux of it. I think it was the detail along the way that was built during Garba's time, which I think they did a really good job with, now had to be handed over, but there was no handover. So you kind of start from scratch, but there was an existing platform, but there were people fighting against that platform. But also, as you kind of went along week after week, you realize, but there were a lot of guys that were actually also for that way and that platform. So it was a very, probably for me, the first time I had to manage like a very politically tense situation, which I'm not used to, which I usually keep myself out of. If there's anything political going on, I kind of just step back and I put my earphones in and I do my thing, I do my job and I go on. But I was kind of thrown into the middle of it, and I couldn't really, if I ignored it, it would mean me not actually helping, not actually trying to find a solution to this very complex problem. So yeah, to give you an answer to your question in terms of rugby philosophy, my philosophy, true to myself, I think will always stay. It's to play a game that's attractive, that's fast, and that's exhilarating to watch. But I also totally understand that every team is different. Every team has its own specific DNA that you have to mold yourself to, and you have to twist and turn to make sure you get the both. That you kind of find a way to mix what you want to instill into the team, but also what they have as capacity. And as I say, what they have historically created at the club. So it's a complex process. I think we've found good solutions at Lyon with our style of play. It is definitely going to evolve, and I'd be disappointed if we're not evolving every day and every month. But small increments. It's not massive changes. It's not we're going 2-4-2, 1-3-3, or we're not doing lineouts anymore. We're just playing quick, and it's small little changes that I think can have a big cumulative effect to give us better results in the end of the day.
Super interesting.
I think what interests me a lot, AB, I think it's your journey. I remember back in the day we connected ages ago when you were at the Sharks. And I saw all your crazy videos on Instagram. You were a bit like me as well. We were very present on social media right in the beginning. And, that question comes up a lot, how can you become a coach at the highest level? How can you become a coach in top 14 on the Premiership? And, that's a tricky one, because we see here in France, a lot of players get appointed into clubs because they are former players or they were big names. And you just mentioned that, because of a neck injury, you were forced to stop. And firstly, massive respect, because you're a great example of hard work, being relentless, chasing what you want. You know what your goals were. You never knew whether you're going to make it, but you knew you were going to give it your best. And there's a lot of coaches out there that often miss out on unbelievable coaching opportunities, are brilliant at what they do, but they don't always have that so-called, as in France, like we call it, credibility, because they never played high. I don't believe in that. I believe if you're good at what you do, you have the skill set, all those different qualities, you should get the job. But in France, we do see it's the case where you have to be a former player, either you played in the club. But for those young coaches out there starting that are that maybe did not have a great career as a player, but they are brilliant at what they are doing. How can they go about to get that job? That not that dream job, but get their foot in the door to coach at the professional level.
Gurthro, I think it's a tough question to answer, but I think the big thing is the foundation of working hard and having serious goals that you set for yourself, and having a roadmap of how you want to achieve those goals. And achieving the goals that you set for yourself don't necessarily mean I have to coach Western Province under 21s in 2 years' time, or I have to become a top 14 coach in 5 years' time. I would make it more personal even than that. It says one of my goals is to be one of the best line-out specialists in the next 5 years. And now that's a complex goal, because how do you measure that? You know what I mean? But it's the roadmap, the roadmap that you create to achieving that goal, and that's just one of your goals along this route to try and become a professional coach. So first thing is the groundwork. You need to do the groundwork. You need to become a specialist in either an area or in as many areas as you can. After that, it's 100% a little bit of luck and timing. And the timing aspect is a funny one, because it's the older you get, the more pressure you have to obviously find a job, provide for yourself, etc. And there comes a point in time, not for everybody, but I can imagine for most coaches, if it's not earlier, then it's later, even in the professional game, where you come to a crossroad where either I'm going to go this route and keep pushing and following that I love and what I want to do. And that might cost you certain things. It might cost you time. It might cost you relationships. It might cost you income. And that might be the route you have to take to be able to take that next step to get to become, say, for instance, that under 21 provincial coach. And I think at those crossroads, there's a lot of people and a lot of coaches that take the safer route. Now, I'm not saying to everybody, chuck everything in the air and go left and follow your dreams, because it's just statistically everybody follows their dreams and only X amount of people are going to make it. But there are difficult decisions that you are going to be confronted with. And I think sometimes people don't take enough time to decide what is it that I'm going to do here. So for instance, when I was at the Sharks and got offered the Toulouse job, it took me 2.5 months to make a decision. And I literally listed everything. And it wasn't just me. It was me and my wife. And at that time, she had just fallen pregnant. We had just started renovating our house. There was a lot going. I was just about to sign a new contract with the Sharks for Super Rugby. It was a long list of stuff that I had to consider. And it took me a long time to make that final decision. And it was the day before I said yes. It was one thing that happened. And then I said, okay, now I know. Now I know what we need to do. My wife agreed and we signed the contract and off we went.
Yeah, no, it's I think the biggest thing that stood out there for me, AB, is like what I like is what you say, you got to be a specialist in the area. And, that was the advice I got from my man, Richie Gray, as well. I had coached with the Box back in the day, and he's also been, I think you've worked with him in Scotland as well, or it might have been before, I'm not sure. But Richie, a great man, and that was probably one of the greatest advice he's given me, is like being a specialist in a specific area. And also like, sometimes it's just about a little bit of luck. I remember, and I think the big thing is what a lot of people don't get. They see we coach at the highest level and they say, oh, right, he's great with this guy. It takes hard work. It's about being consistent. Like you mentioned, they're paying the price. I remember the stage. I wasn't spending as much time with the family because I was going out on coaching gigs. I was going all over the place. I was using every opportunity. And the funny thing is, I was fortunate enough to have a fairly decent career. I was fortunate to have won a few trophies. But when I transitioned into coaching, I didn't have it easy. I didn't have a job waiting for me like a lot of former players have. They step into a job, they get that opportunity. There's not that dark period. I was like, how do I get started? I used to hear things like applying for jobs. Sorry, we can't take you because you've been an international player. You're going to overshadow the coach. Or, sorry, you've played for Toulouse. You're going to go back to Toulouse and share all our secrets. I had all these excuses. Sorry, you're a foreigner. All these type of things. And it's actually a funny story. like the strategy I followed in order to get those opportunities was via social media. I just followed the advice of a mate. It's just being my thing, sharing my message, empowering players with knowledge and skills. And that's what I did. Obviously, today it's a bit tougher as a coach to do that, as well. We are busy. The mental load is ridiculous. But no, it's about just putting yourself out there, building your network, and also just reaching out to people. I think that is very important.
100%.
So, and it's not always that easy. So I can relate as well to coaches that didn't just step into a job because they were a former player. Like I had to graft, I had to stay in that fight, and I found that balance today a bit better, in terms of with family life and my coaching job as well. But in the past, like I did pay the price, there was a stage I was very distant in my family life, and I'm not, how can I say, scared to acknowledge it because I want people to learn from my mistakes. So yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Ben, anything you would like to add, my man?
Yeah, I mean, both of you have both spoken about the work ethic that's required, and maybe not used the word sacrifice, or but basically you're super dedicated. Yeah, I think it'd be really good for people listening. I sometimes have to explain to people, you don't necessarily have much time with the players, during a typical week. And I know in Test rugby it's even less, So I remember speaking to an international coach, and he was talking about the defence, and he said, "I've got 18 minutes this week." And I think that baffled when I relayed that to spectators, the average fan, they're baffled by that. How can you only have 18 minutes? That was obviously in that system with that turnaround. But maybe you can give us an indication of like your, for the guys listening, your average type of week. Maybe that's in season or out of season, whatever you want. Just give us an idea of how the week works for you in terms of preparation, and like not just your area, but for prepping your guys for a game at the weekend.
Yeah, I think the way you prepare for a game is probably very personal, I'd say. I think every person or every coach has got their own style, so nobody will do it the same. Nobody will look at a game the same. Nobody's seeing the same things in the same image, and I think that's what makes coaching so interesting and makes it so unique. There is no other coach like you or like me or like Guts when we are operating on the field or talking to a player or preparing a week. So for me, I'm always trying to find like in French they call it the fil rouge, like the line that kind of connects everything throughout the week from the starting point on a Monday morning at whenever it is 5:15 till you play the match. There has to be this like continuous little connection of messaging and detail and precision to try and get the players to produce what you want them to produce on the weekend on the field. So it's probably a slightly broader answer than what you would expect. But for me, the connection of all the different parts is for me the key. The connection of all the different things and how you align it for me is the key, and not necessarily this is my weekly program, this is how the day looks. I spend 8 minutes on a Monday, 12 minutes on a Tuesday. We do a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday split, or we would do a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday off. I think that's your unique style, and you need to decide what it is you want to do with the makeup of your team. But the connection of all the bits for me is the key at this stage. I think, especially at the professional level, where we're operating in the top 14, everybody is a good coach. Most of the coaches are specialists in their area, but it's how do you deliver that message? What are the quality of reps that you're producing on the field, and how are you preparing the individuals to prepare themselves to be excellent every day when they step on the pitch? And that's the big challenge. That's my big challenge at the moment. So,
and from your point of view, you obviously went from Toulouse to Scotland. That must have been quite a big jump, I suppose. How did you find that, the change from being able to work with players every day to suddenly working with an international group of players? And obviously there's so many differences, moving country obviously, and all that type of stuff with the families is hard enough as it is, but how did you find that change?
Yeah, for me it was difficult. It was difficult not being a part of something every day. and having long periods of, I would say, of deep analysis and massive preparation, which was a big learning curve for me and a very interesting time, and a time that definitely molded my coaching to what it is today, because I saw how deep you can go and how far you can go with more time and more resources, and how that does really does make a difference. But for me personally, I like the daily grind. I like being a part of something that's constantly moving and churning, and walking in on a Monday or walking in every morning and seeing the staff members around you, having a coffee, those in between work moments where you really like appreciate what you do. Not that I don't appreciate the work time, but it's the mix of all of that I really love. But to go back to the international side, there was again crazy experiences from that international coaching time where you're playing in some of the greatest locations in the world with the best players in the world at hand, and you can say that you're a part of that, which was amazing. So I think everything has its pros and its cons, but personally for me, I'm probably at this stage in my life with very young kids, it's better for me probably to be with a team and be in a weekly kind of week to week flow, because it's, me and my missus were talking about it a couple of weeks ago. It's difficult to explain to a 3 or a 4-year-old that is going away now for 6 to 8 weeks. They don't understand that. They don't understand why you're gone. Whereas if you've got an 11-year-old boy or a 14-year-old boy or girl, you can say, Daddy's going to go on tour with the team. And they're like, cool, I know what that means. That means you're doing your job, you're going on tour, you're coming back. We'll chat to you every night.
Yeah.
But for 2 young kids, it's a difficult concept to grasp. It's not possible for them to really understand it. So I would say it is doable, and it was doable for me. But if I had to choose, just because of my family situation, and for them, it's definitely better that I'm rather with a club at the moment than international.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because the perception is that it wouldn't necessarily be that way. But did you find that was the biggest challenge with changing between the two roles?
Yeah, probably the family part of it was a tough one. Something to really, like, you have to plan carefully and manage.
The contact time with the players, was that probably the biggest challenge for you? Like just having less contact time with them and bigger gaps in between, as opposed to the daily grind that you love? Was that probably the biggest?
The one thing about the SRU, which is great, is that they've only got two teams. So I was living in Edinburgh, and I was able to get to Glasgow and to Edinburgh quite frequently. So I did have that contact time with a lot of the players, which was good for me, but I hope also good for their development. But yeah, it is, as I say, it's a different rhythm. There's a lot of time that you spend online with players, going through clips, trying to get them to understand what it is you want from them, and you're trying to mold them towards the plan that you have for this international period, but you're also not trying to kind of interfere with what they're doing locally. So it's a very fine balance to find when you're working with them. But Gregor was brilliant at guiding me, and they obviously had a process in place already. So it was pretty simple to jump in and just kind of get stuck in.
I know you're dying to say something.
No. I think there's some great topics and some great gems being dropped at the moment. I thought I'd just mix it up a little bit, Ben. I recently did this exercise and I found it quite interesting, and maybe it will take you a bit out of your comfort zone, AB. Right, so I got a quick question for you. I want you to think very quickly about it. Don't hesitate. And basically, it summarizes the person you are, what you bring as a coach in a club. So if you could choose an animal, who would you be?
Choose an animal, what will I be? Oh, I don't know. I heard that it's a difficult one to answer, but I heard every single type of personality can fit into 3 characters: either Winnie the Pooh, Tigger, or Piglet. If I had to go between the 3, I'd probably say I'm Tigger.
Okay, all right, I like that. Okay, so we all love music. What type of genre of music best sums you up?
Difficult. Laid back, alternative style music, I'd say. Yeah.
Any group in particular?
I'm an old school Jack Johnson fan, and anything similar.
I was about to say Jack Johnson for AB. That's
Any one of those are in and around. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this is my favorite one. If you had to be a meal, what would you be?
Is it a meal for looks or for taste?
It's like, what does that meal like? Whenever we have a meal, it gives us a certain type of feeling. All right. So, what type of satisfaction would be?
I'd be a crispy pork belly with veggies and a lovely sauce over the top.
Ben, put you in a spot here. What type of meal would you be, Ben?
I've not heard the meal one before,
Well,
to be honest with you.
I think the both of you would be boiled eggs.
Oh, come on. Here, no respect, man. No respect. Okay. Okay. I just want one question that I would like to actually ask you, because I get this asked a lot. I mean, imagine yourself, there was a lot of, we still see a lot of comments going on the danger of the bomb squad. South Africa, we've seen that, the stuff going around. There's a lot of banter going on. We see the famous sayings like, they don't know what we know. And people asked me a lot about the South African mentality. You being a South African, but you've coached for Scotland and you have loads of experience as a coach. And I like to refer to it as the Springbok mindset. So as a coach, what would you say is like makes the Springboks the team that they are like? Because sometimes we would have a look at the box and they would be, how can I say, criticized for not playing attractive rugby. I've been part of teams back then. I was like, I don't care what it looks like as long as we win. But in your mind, what would you say contributes to this South African mentality or Springbok mindset? Because a lot of people don't get it. I know what my answer is, but I would like to get your opinion as in South African, but also from a coach that has been on the other side, facing the box.
It's a difficult one. I think I can draw a parallel between Toulouse in a way and South African rugby. Toulouse has a style of rugby that's very unique to any other team in the world. And people think it's because of the way they coach them, or because of the type of players they have, or buy in, or because of, something really special and different that nobody else knows about in terms of the professional level. But it's everything below. Toulouse is built on the 4-year-olds that arrive, the 5-year-olds that arrive and train there twice a week in a specific style. And that style is built through the age group, and they produce these gems of players. So it's something that built through, I want to say, through a lifetime, through through years and years of chipping away, and through decades of creating this identity. And I think South Africa is very similar. We've created an identity over decades, and everything funnels into that. From Biliki rugby, when you're 5-6 years old and you're playing rugby without shoes until the age of 12, it's built there. It's built from the age of 13 to 18 when you go to school. Either you're in the hostel, living in the Corsace, and it's tough. And you arrive from a small school and you were the main man, and now you arrive at Paul Roos and there's 7 other scrummers. Now you have to break through that competition and those testing situations. And I think all those little, those little scenarios, those little pictures that we see, and I know you said they don't know what we know, but I think it does really come down to that. It's the way of living. It's the way of life in South Africa. If you're a kid that grows up with rugby in your veins, and that's the only thing you eat, sleep, and drink for 18 years of your life, and you've had the luck to pass by 1 or 2 good coaches and be in a good school and have a reasonable good DNA to be an athlete, that's what it produces. So, South African rugby is, at the moment, it's an absolute machine, and it's just churning out players. I know the under 20 results didn't go our way now this weekend, but I mean, you just have to go to any school in the Cape on a weekend and go watch school rugby, and then you can see exactly how healthy it is and how strong it is, and that you're not going to find anywhere else in the world. So this probably comes down to the school system, the effort that goes into that school system, but not just the top schools. It's the small schools too. It's the schools in the middle of nowhere that produces that one gem that ends up being entitled prop for South Africa, plays 100 test caps, you know? So yeah, that's not really an answer. It's just a explanation of the situation, but that's what it creates. And then my dad always talks about one thing, and I 100% agree. And I think, Ben, you might have heard the story, but it's also about fuck. And for people that don't know what that is, the only word that I can describe in English to describe it is dog. Yeah. South Africans have dog inside of them. Like there's from the smallest oak to the biggest oak, every single guy grows up wanting, loving to tackle, number one. Wanting, loving to smash an oak in a ruck. It's just a mental like standard in the country. And if you don't have that, you will not be playing rugby. Dog is probably the second answer to your question.
Definitely not Snoop Dogg.
And you too? What were you going to say?
No, about what?
What's your favorite?
I think, when I was playing for the Boks, the stuff that we were always held to a high standard. And I always remember the words of, John Smith and Jean de Villiers back in the day. The guys would always say that jersey does not belong to us. We need to leave it in a better place. And Jean always used to say as well, we always put the jersey first before our own personal beliefs, our own personal interests. We always put the jersey first, and that jersey does not belong to you. It belongs to a nation, belongs to a country. And I think, the biggest driving force is that we're playing for something bigger than rugby in South Africa. And that's how I felt. And that's what you can clearly see. You see in the last few World Cups, how it's unified our country. Watching the 95 World Cup was one of the biggest reasons I started playing rugby, because, that's when it became my dream, and later it became my vision. But it's tying into what AB just said, is that it starts at school level. You have that pure pride playing for your school. The competition is high. You get exposed to that pressure games at the early stage of your rugby career. You're playing anything between 5,000 to 20,000 people at schoolboy level. But having that, it's just part of who we are. We enjoy hurting people. I always used to be like Bucky's Botha. He used to say, I'm going to try to mimic his accent. The only pain that I know is the pain that I inflict. So, that's my two cents. It's a tough one. Like, that's why I asked the question. I love it to hear other people's opinions. But I think it comes down to playing for something bigger. And I think what I enjoyed that Rush, if you watch the documentary series from Chasing the Sun, how he's created a space where players from different backgrounds and cultures have the freedom to express themselves. And, you're seeing the guys see us singing before the game. Back in the day, people were like, what's that all about? And everybody's embracing it. The different cultures, making those little efforts to learn about each other. And I think that's brilliant, because the Springboks, compared to when I was playing and now, I think has become an even bigger symbol of unification and bringing people together and say, hey, let's forget about our differences. Let's build something together. Let's inspire people. And I think, when you have that intrinsic motivation where it's not just about the desired result in everything that we do in life. I think we all want to be great coaches, but I always say one of the things that I'm chasing as a coach is to impact players' lives, to make them better human beings, to upskill them, to help them, to inspire them. And I think that's the big thing about the South African mindset. But yeah, I know you know AB very well. So I know you mentioned to me that, because I originally said to Ben, don't worry, doing some research on AB, deep diving, checking his Instagram account, his Twitter, his Tinder. No, I'm just joking. Straight to narrow road. But Ben, I think you have some unbelievable insight. Any stories that you can share with us about AB, what you've experienced back in the day with him?
I mean, I've known AB since he was a boy, so probably not anything that's too... it's an interesting journey, and we've been on a similar journey in many ways. I went to find Pierre Villepreux about 10 years ago. And then I'd obviously been coached by AB's dad, Alan, and knew that he was a Pierre Villepreux fan from back in the day. And it was, about 8 years ago, 7, 8 years ago, I was able to bring the guys over and invite AB and Alan along over to see Pierre. So that's been an amazing thread, that connects us as well, because we've both been passionate about seeing how you can evolve the game and explore. I guess, one of the biggest challenges I see today in modern rugby, if we're talking specifically about the game, is that we don't want to be copy and paste coaches, and I find that's a real big challenge, to find people who think outside the box, who aren't just going to be doing what everybody else does, but with, either better or lesser players. So it's fascinating. I think one of the challenges, and I mean, it's probably another podcast altogether, is I'd love to know from AB how he manages to connect that methodology, which is a thread from the past with Pierre, which is still present with Hugo Muller and some of the Toulouse guys, and some of the other coaches that played for Pierre and have gone everywhere, and how AB finds, trying to bring that to life with in other areas, in other systems, and where maybe the history and the understanding isn't completely there. I think that's something I'd love to probably dive into a bit.
Yeah, Ben, it's a good question. I think for me, there's two parts. I'm just making notes as we're going here, but for me, there's two parts. The first one is practice design. So what is in your weekly plan? What is the detail going into your sessions? What kind of drills and games are you pushing? What rules are you putting in there? How are you reffing it? Those are really, really important things for you to try and replicate the behaviors that you want to see. And obviously we've spent a lot of time together, and we've got a bag of skills and tricks that we try and use to get players to play this movement game. But it takes time. That's probably the biggest thing. It takes time. I've started now at Lyon. We've just managed to stay in the top 14 and we finished 7th. But I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep pushing in terms of the practice design. I'm going to keep searching for space for individual development. And the second thing is probably the messaging. So what is the environment that you create around the way you want to play and around the skill set that you're pushing? So I always use the example, if we're a team that says, okay, we're gonna offload the ball, we're gonna do everything to teach players how to create opportunities to offload the ball. So we're working on our footwork, we're trying to beat the man one-on-one, we're working on connecting the players in and around that ball carrier, etc. But if your messaging is after the second or the third game, poor offload out the back, didn't look, okay, the process wasn't followed, but your reaction in a team meeting is, this is terrible, I never want to see this again, and it's firm and it's strong, and you're angry because you lost the game because of that offload. All the work you did before to get the team to be able to produce or to work towards being a good offloading team, from that point forward, it's dead. You've killed all that work just by poor messaging. So that's really important for me. What it is you're trying to achieve with the players, you need to know exactly what that is, and the messaging has to go with it. It has to be a clear-cut message, and you have to stand strong. You have to be able to roll with the punches, even though it's costing you games, even though it's costing you possibly relationships with other players in the squad that don't fit into what it is you're trying to do. So I think you have to be a coach that always used to say it a lot. Dave Williams, that's now at the Sharks, says you have to be brave. So you have to be brave to play a certain style of rugby, but I think you also have to be brave to coach a certain style of rugby.
Yeah, to stick to your guns.
Stick to your guns. And maybe it's not the right style for the team that you're at, and it doesn't work out, and that happens, and that's life. But again, that's where you gotta find that balance, and you gotta find the connection between what you want as a coach and what the team's ceiling is, and how far you can push that ceiling.
I mean, I've got loads of rugby questions, I guess, but I'm how far? Maybe a quick question, just like 30 seconds, if possible. Like, how different do you think Test match rugby and say top 14 is? Like, how different in terms of the style of rugby, contact time? If you were coaching, because you just alluded to like a game model and what the player capabilities are. So if you're going to go and coach a national team tomorrow to win a World Cup, does basically it become defense, set piece, and goal kicking, as opposed to what you've just been talking about?
That's the start. You can't get away from it. So those are that what you mentioned there is the start of all the non-negotiables. That should be
that's your foundation, if you like.
The foundation. Every single team has to have that in place. What you do to produce that extra, it's how much time you can find to spend on those things that make a difference. That, like you said, isn't just copy and paste. But there's some things that you can't get away from. You need a good scrum and a line out, and you need to be good at restarts, and you need to have a good kicker or two or three.
All those all the things that all accumulate.
Defense, you need to be fit. Those are the bare bones and the basics for me. For me, the other end of the spectrum of the speedometer is all those skills and things that you don't work on possibly every day, but what you actually should be working on. So the key is how quickly can you instill those basics and those foundations to be able to spend more time on the things that's going to make you a dangerous team.
Yeah. Okay, I guess I've got a couple of like quick fire questions for you.
Yeah.
If we're in agreement that the last 20 years, rugby is 25 years, I'd say probably the biggest area of development in rugby for the last 25 years has been in strength and conditioning. That's been the biggest focus point. Making that a statement. Assuming, whether you agree or not, what do you think is going to be the next development area in rugby? Is it just going to be a continuation of that? Is it analysis? Is it like GPS?
I think we're already in that cycle.
Okay,
I think we're already
skill development for the individual.
Yeah.
Okay.
Skill development to the 10th degree, that it's just going to produce better and better rugby. I use a team like Ireland as an example. So Ireland couldn't compete because they weren't physically there. I'm talking about years and years ago. They became world beaters in terms of strength and conditioning. They started competing. How did they become a team that could possibly win a World Cup cycle by cycle? Because they are now one of the best skilled groups in the world.
Are they the best, one of the best skilled, or have they had some amazing coaches that have taught them systems that they've learned well because they're cohesive and they play together most of the time for a few provinces?
But that in itself is still a skill for me.
I suppose, it depends how you define skill, doesn't it? Yeah, what we're talking about,
Be highly skilled and connected and play your certain style of rugby that you've been playing for the last 4 to 6 years. For instance, at Leinster, that is an absolute super strength to have. But to get to that point, the level of skill that each player has to possess is big. And I'm not talking about skill as in something flashy, but prop carrying the ball, stepping at the exact right time to find space on the outside to create quicker ball for the next phase. That's maybe their skill that they've been honing for the last 6 to 8 years.
Yeah, beautiful. G, you're dying to shut me up.
No, not at all. Not at all. We need to get things wrapped up, and like AB mentioned earlier, we're also passionate about resilience, mindset, performance, and a lot of different topics on this podcast. And just to wrap things up, we don't want to keep you too long, AB. Thanks for taking the time. But I think, you already shared a lot of things and a lot of challenges you've faced over the past few years as a coach. But is there something you can share with the audience, or those of them listening or watching, struggle that you experienced? It was really tough. It really took some resilience to get through it. And how did you get through it? We all experience tough times at some stage in our life. Everybody's challenge, everybody's fight is different, but when we experience, it feels like it's the toughest battle that we've ever faced. Is there something that you can share with us without maybe sharing something too personal, but something you feel comfortable sharing with us that our audience can learn from?
Yeah, I would say I've had a couple of challenging moments, but one from quite long ago, when early in my career, still when I was at the Sharks. I think it must have been my third year, around my third, fourth year at the Sharks. I was lined up and told that I was going to be getting this job for the following year. And I'd been working hard towards this position, and it was kind of all okayed. And then in the one day I stayed late at work. I think I was still doing club training at that time at Collegians. And I was at the club late at night, and I came back to the office because I think I had to go fetch my laptop or something. And I walked in, and I heard there were people in the office, and I saw another coach meeting with, at that time, the director of rugby. And I just knew this was a meeting about the position that I had been promised. And subsequently, I didn't get the job. This person got the job, and it was a tough pill for me to swallow because, you get into, and this is the reality of life, but you do hard work and you feel like, oh, I've done enough to get X or Y, and you even have the perception that, okay, this is now going to happen. And then last minute it gets taken away. And I think it's a big lesson for me in professional rugby to know that it's the deal isn't done till it's done, until it's signed. And that was a tough pill for me to swallow. And I was contemplating on, like throwing my hands in the air and running away and saying, oh, I've been working too hard and too long and not getting but I swallowed the pill and kept on working, kept coaching, and found a way later in a different route. And probably in the end, it worked out better. So, but at that time, it was tough, yeah.
No, thanks for sharing that, Ben. Anything you would like to add there before we close off this unbelievable episode?
No, it's great. Thanks, AB, for coming on. I really appreciate it, man. It's good to see you. I think I'd love to drill down another time on some of the other stuff.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to, because I know I made a little bit of a muddle up there, but the dynamic systems theory, it's the phrase that I was looking for is the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And I think that's
never heard of that, actually.
That's a very powerful line, and something that I truly believe in. If you're a good coach and you've got a good coaching group and you're very cohesive and you put the things together properly, you can create something special. And that phrase for me kind of sums it up.
Awesome, great stuff. And this is what I love about these podcasts, AB, and I've learned a lot of things and I've made quite a few notes. I got about like 5 pages written down here. And no, I did not write in kindergarten handwriting super big or anything like that. I actually made proper notes. But yeah, it's unbelievable. And thanks for those of you that are listening. And as always, we are still figuring out all the kinks. As you can see, sometimes look in a computer, then I forget to look in a camera. Who cares? But it's all about having fun and learning from our guests. And we would appreciate any help that you can give us in maybe recommending people that you know that can contribute to our good discussions. And also, when I eventually post this stuff on YouTube or Instagram, like it, share it with your friends. That would be unbelievable. Myself and Ben are available on social media. We'll share our different handles. And AB, my man, I'm coaching in top 14 as well. I know what it's like. All of the best for new season. I'm super happy that you guys managed to bail out towards the end of the season. And I know that you guys will have an unbelievable season with the right coaching staff, and especially having someone like you right there. I know you're going to be driving a lot of things, and best of luck and enjoy the holidays. There's still some holidays left before you get back and stuck into it.
Thanks, Gurthro. I appreciate it. And we'll meet each other on the side of the field, I hope.